Fun fact, Udyr's win rate dropped by almost a whole % after he got buffed. What's up, Summoners? My name is Zyrene, and I'm here to welcome you back to another mid-patch update. Like always, we're here to give you guys a follow-up on our initial patch rundown at the beginning of the patch. Based on more recent data, we're going to be making any necessary adjustments to our tier lists so that you'll have the best odds of winning your solo queue games. We'll be providing you guys with tier lists for all 5 roles, so make sure to stay tuned. I want to let you guys know that if you're serious about improving this season, you'll want to head over to ProGuides.com because we've got a ton of content there that'll help you take your game to the next level. If you want to save time by having one of our coaches review one of your VODs, for example, we've got you covered. Just take a second to check it out. For our question of the day, do you have any ideas for extra voice lines you'd like to add to champions? I'd like to hear Cho'Gath say something like "Bon appetit" as he's ulting. I think it would add a little extra flavor, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. So let me know. Now with that said, let's hop into the video. Alright, beginning in the top lane, let's run you guys through any shifts to our tier list. First up, let's follow up on the balance change to Aurelia. Believe it or not, buffing Aurelia's ultimate had little to no effect on her presence in solo queue. Ouch. While yes, she's objectively stronger, the fact that Aurelia's win rate remained rather stagnant might mean that yes, games are often decided before Aurelia players even hit level 16. Unfortunately, a little bit of extra damage later into the game doesn't amount to much, as what's more important is creating early game leads and snowballing through constant fighting. With that said, let's go over our other changes though. This time around, we've made a couple of adjustments to the list. We've moved Akali and Tryndamere both down a tier. Akali did get nerfed this patch, and she hasn't been performing nearly as well as before in both the top and mid lane. To reflect this, we've felt the need to make adjustments this time around, and she'll be considered a B tier pick for this update. Tryndamere hasn't been finding as much success across all ranks as well. A big reason for this is that Malphite's presence inhibits Tryndamere. Malphite is gaining a ton of traction, and there are plenty of matchups that are rather difficult for Tryndamere right now. If he's not able to snowball hard, other picks like Jax, Darius, or even Camille can impact the rest of the map and carry games through team fighting and taking objectives. While split pushing and dominating lane is one way to carry games, Tryndamere has fallen slightly below a positive win rate, and this implies that maybe other strategies might be more effective at the moment. Our OP tier for the top lane remains the same from our original patch rundown. We have Darius as our OP pick, followed by Fiora, Garen, Jax, Urgot, Singed, Maokai, Camille, and Shen in the S tier. Next up, let's update you guys on the jungle. So we got 2 jungle changes this patch that we want to go over. First up is Udyr. Ironically, his win rate dropped in spite of a buff this patch. What exactly does this entail? Well, it might just mean that more people are playing him, and because more people are playing him, there are going to be more losses with him. Players that don't pick him exclusively have been encouraged to give him a try this patch, so that could also contribute to his lower win rate. Lots of first-timers or people who tried giving him another chance hit him with a good old one and done, and now they are out of there. The other thing is that there are probably plenty of players experimenting with new builds, so we're sure that Udyr's win rate will bounce back up within a patch or 2. However, after some assessing, we've decided that Udyr simply doesn't fit in with the other champions that are in the A tier and have dropped him into the B tier. His kit feels a little too simplistic, but perhaps another buff or a new build surfacing might be what he needs to compete with higher tier champions. Ivern has also been moved because he's been finding a lot more success in this patch. We're moving Ivern into the A tier as his win rates have increased by a little more than a whole % this time around. The extra slow on his shield provides some more weight and presence for both defensive and offensive purposes. As a champion based solely on utility, a buff to his utility will of course make him feel noticeably stronger. A quick note we want to mention to our high elo friends is that Rek'Sai looks pretty OP right now. In Platinum and higher, her win rate falls just short of 54%, while in Diamond 2 and higher, she holds the highest win rate just a tad above 55%. That's really high, and we're sure that she's an exceptional counter pick as well as a solid blind pick. She also has incredible base damage, and like we've been saying, it feels like the early game is what decides games right now. Wrapping up the jungle, let's run through the best picks right now. Our OP tier in the jungle consists of Hecarim and Rammus, followed by Evelynn, Kha'Zix, Karthus, Fiddlesticks, Nunu, Rek'Sai, Vi, Elise, Kayn, and Graves in our S tier. With that covered, let's jump into the mid lane next. We're headed into the sections with tons of balance changes, and I'm super excited for this. Starting with Azir, there's not much to say. He already held abysmal win rates around 45% for the majority of players, and this patch, he's sunk even lower. In competitive play, Azir has proven himself to be a bit stronger than Riot would like him to be, and thus Riot nerfed him this patch. Unfortunately, it's still grim for Azir players, and he'll remain in the C tier. Same thing goes for Twisted Fate. Wasn't doing so hot in solo queue, but a ton of professional players still valued him as a pick. The loss of 5 movement speed caused his win rate to drop by about 0.5% this patch, but we'll keep him in the B tier for now. He's weaker now, but the difference isn't big enough for us to move him down any further. Like we mentioned already, Akali did get nerfed, but we'll keep her in the B tier. She had her Q damage slightly reduced, and while that's dropped her win rate, it's clear that Akali can still carry games in the right hands. Her Q is extremely spammable, even if it's a bit weaker now, and she still boasts high mobility as well as high burst damage. Ahri's compensation buffs have done her justice. Her win rate has shot back up by almost 2% since last patch. The increased mana costs were making it much harder to play her, as she's a very mana-hungry champion early on. Even little buffs like these are bound to make all the difference for her, and we've gone ahead and brought Ahri back up into the A tier to reflect this buff. Sylas also received a buff, so this is actually going to come off a little bit weird. We've moved Sylas down to the A tier, but that's simply because he hasn't been performing as well as the other S tier picks. We do think Sylas is a powerful pick, as his ultimate's cooldown is rather short now. However, he comes off as a very situational pick, and we feel more comfortable considering him a high A tier pick rather than an S tier one. Sorry if this causes any confusion for you guys, but let's talk about the data for a bit. Sylas's overall win rate, like Aurelia, pretty much stayed the same in spite of the fact that he received a massive late game buff. In high elo, his win rate has increased ever so slightly, however. For now, our OP picks for the mid lane are still Yone, and we've got Fizz, Vladimir, Zed, Talon, Kassadin, Katarina, Echo, Diana, Annie, Karthus, Nocturne, and Yasuo following up in the S tier. Kassadin and Katarina are expected to receive nerfs next patch, so we heavily suggest you guys take advantage of these picks while you still can. They've proven to be very strong, and if you enjoy playing them, you might not have much time before they potentially drop a tier. That's it for the mid lane. Let's head over to the bottom lane next. Like our analysts predicted, Caitlyn's win rates have tapered off considerably following the nerfs she received this patch. She's still an S tier pick, but is no longer on a level above the rest of the competition. Lowering her base damage and attack speed scaling is really all it took to put her in her place. With Caitlyn weaker than before, there's more room for many other bot lane picks as they can more easily fight back now. Caitlyn feels like a champion that should struggle with all-ins, and the nerfs this patch should make it easier to exploit her when she steps over her bounds. Although Senna did get nerfed this patch, she's still a pretty powerful marksman pick. Her immense utility makes it so that she'll almost never be a bad pick. I mean, you've got a marksman with high range, crowd control, the ability to cloak her team, heal, and even a global shield that also deals damage to opponents. She's honestly pretty blessed, and though her scaling has been toned down a bit, we still think she's an S tier pick. Lucian's win rates this patch have dropped by nearly a whole percent. However, this doesn't feel like the worst nerf, as it just seems kinda fair. He's an extremely dominant early game champion, and this patch his AD per level was reduced. In cases where games drag on, it only seems right that Lucian should fall off. However, it does feel like he's falling off a bit too hard, and if your opponents counterpick you, play extremely safe, or have a jungler babysitting them, it can be difficult to take off with. He feels a little bit riskier than before, so we're going to place him in the B tier in this update. Next up is Sivir, with probably the biggest surprise of this patch. 5 more movement speed on her passive actually increased her win rate by almost a whole percentage in high elo. This caught our analysts off guard, as this isn't a persistent movement speed buff. Instead, it only applies when she's in combat. At the end of the day, however, this buff essentially means that Sivir is faster when it matters. A passive 5 extra movement speed would make for small differences, like making it back into lane faster or rotating to Baron a half second earlier. Stuff like that. However, having 5 extra movement speed in combat is still extremely beneficial, as this is where you'll be able to utilize it when trying to either kite or chase opponents. Considering Sivir's short range, this buff was a pretty important one for her. Thus, we've moved Sivir up into the A tier. Vayne also received a nice buff to her ultimate, and the results have been pretty clear. We've seen her overall high elo win rate go up by about a whole percent. 10 extra AD on her ultimate is pretty impactful, and of course, both Caitlyn and Lucian also got nerfed this patch. Like our analysts predicted, Vayne is back in the S tier as a result of the buffs she received this time around. Aphelios also received a buff to his AD scaling this patch, and it's kinda crazy to know that his win rate went up by almost a whole percent. He ends the game with 7 more AD than before, and his win rate has increased by a whole percentage. You guys get the idea. AD is a big deal to marksman. He's also going to stay where he is in the A tier for now, but our analysts will continue to monitor him as he might be making an S tier push very soon. Thus, our S tier for the bottom lane consists of Caitlyn, Ashe, Jhin, Draven, Ezreal, the Lux and Sona duo, Misfortune, and Vayne. Finally, let's wrap things up with supports. Our analysts have done a perfect job of composing a support tier list this time around. because, well, there were no support balance changes. Just to give you guys some food for thought, we'll basically just give you some details of the current support meta. While Thresh is still the most popular support in the game, he doesn't seem like the best one right now. In terms of melee supports, it seems like a toss-up between Leona, Pantheon, and Blitzcrank right now. Each of them have their own strengths, and it's always matchup as well as player dependent. Aside from them, we have tons of enchanters who remain extremely popular as well. Picks like Yuumi, Lulu, and Morgana are beginning to get banned out extremely often. At the same time, we do have supports like Janna and Lux who still consistently make it past the ban phase. To conclude our support section, we'll leave you with our S tier picks, who are Lulu, Blitzcrank, Senna, Soraka, Bard, Morgana, Nami, Janna, Leona, Alistar, and Lux. That concludes our 10.19 mid-patch update. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to leave any feedback you guys have in the comments below. Like always, I want you to check out ProGuides.com if you're interested in improving your gameplay with our abundance of resources. Until next time though, best of luck on the Rift Summoners, and I hope to see you all in our next video.